Standing by now on the line is our good friend Larry Kudlow from CNBC. He's the host of the Kudlow Report on CNBC and the Larry Kudlow Show, which can be heard on WMAL Saturdays at 7 p.m. Larry, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
I want to play a little clip for you from the President of the United States. This was at a fundraiser, and this is what the President had to say, and I want to get your reaction to it. Listen closely.
I know that there are a few Republicans here in the audience. If you talk to us, it turns out, we're pretty common sense folks. We don't think government can do everything. We don't think that top-down solutions are the right way to go. We believe in the free market. We believe in a light touch when it comes to regulations. We don't want to tax all businesses out of business. But we do think that there's a role to play for government.
So he doesn't believe in top-down solutions. He believes in the free markets. Well, they believe in a light touch on regulation, and they don't want to tax businesses out of business. What do you think when you hear the president say that?
When did he say that?
This was at a fundraiser the other day. And by the way, it's sort of rough audio because it was recorded sort of surreptitiously.
Oh, I remember. That's right. I read someplace that he said that. I just can't imagine what administration he was talking about. I just couldn't. I remember seeing that and saying, very interesting. Well, look, obviously he's not governing the way he's speaking. I don't know what prompted him to say that. Maybe he's just worried that the economy is still, muddling along at 2%. But I can tell you this. He isn't going to get any more taxes. There isn't going to be a grand design deal. He's threatening to really shut down the government by vetoing all the House appropriation bills. They got to put bills up to fund these programs, and he says he's not going to allow that unless he gets his deal, which is to end the sequester and to raise tax again. He's not going to get any of that. S&P gave us a better credit report, stable from negative. So I don't expect much to happen. I don't know what. I wish what he said were true. Gee whiz, sounds like Ronald Reagan, but I don't really expect to hear that.
Larry, Senator Kelly Ayotte came out from New Hampshire, came out and said that she's ready to back the what's called the bipartisan immigration reform bill in the Senate. Now, Rand Paul said this pretty much has zero chances of passing in the House. I think the other big headline on the immigration bill was Marco Rubio saying that we're going to have legalization, that's his word, a lot of people call that amnesty, before they go after the border security. I know you're a big proponent of immigration reform, but doesn't border security need to be the key element here to get the votes needed?
Well, I think it does. I don't know if it's the key. I think deals are going to be struck all around. We had a bunch of us had lunch with Lindsey Graham yesterday up here in New York, and he said basically the same thing. He welcomed Kelly Ayotte into the group. None of this is certain or written in stone yet. Including Marco Rubio, who I have interviewed recently, and who does talk about border security as an important element, but it's not the only important element. My guess is twofold. Number one, our border security, I think, is better than its critics say. And actually, I'll give Obama some credit because he has deported, I think, more people than anybody else in the past. So there has been better border security. I think the other elements of this thing can be worked out, the domestic elements. I'm particularly interested in the high-end, what I call brainiacs, and particularly the engineers who come here and the kids we train who we should leave here, who allow stay in the United States. I know this is complicated in the sense that political sensitivities are high. I get that. But I just think when you look at the individual pieces, it is doable. It's doable in the Senate. Whether it's doable in the House, I don't know. That may be a tougher slog, and we'll have to wait and see. So I don't know about Rand Paul's prediction, but I'm very much optimistic about this, and I think that deals can be made.
But don't you understand the American people's reluctance to not having that security element of it because they don't want to go through this again? We were sold this bill of goods in '87, and then we ended up with the same problem again.
Well, I do understand that point, but I just want to note that border security today is vastly, 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 vastly greater than it was back in the middle and late 1980s. There's just no comparison. And as I say, deportation rates are very high, and they catch a lot of people coming across the border. It's just not the same. I think people are trying to say it's the same, but it's improved enormously. We've spent a small fortune on border security, and we may have to spend more on it. Okay, I get that, but I don't think it's the insuperable obstacle that people are making it out to be. Again, I think you're going to get a Senate bill. Whether it can make it through the House, I do not know, and I would say that's probably the biggest question. That's the biggest question mark.
You know, the big story, of course, is this guy, Edward Snowden, who revealed himself and apparently released all these very, very secret programs that the government has to monitor our phone calls and our emails in the name of fighting terrorism. Is there an economic, element to this beyond the fact that the company this guy worked for, stock, Booz Allen Hamilton stock, has dropped a little bit?
Yeah, Booz Allen got hit yesterday. I'm not sure why. This is not their fault. The guy was only there a couple of months.
Right.
And he's been out elsewhere. He's been in the CIA and had a lot of odd jobs. Look, the guy's a traitor. He needs to be extradited, and then he needs to go to jail for 2 or 3 decades. I mean, that's the way I look at it. To me, and I do have concerns about reading email, and I do have concerns about, tapping and listening to phone calls. But as I understand it, and again, we heard a lot from Lindsey Graham yesterday on this topic at the luncheon we had here in New York, just a few people. The FISA court is absolutely the key to this, isn't it? I mean, the FISA court, if there's probable cause, all right, they might issue a warrant if they're on the track, if they see patterns of phone calls and so forth, and then they will start to look at your calls and your email. But if there's no probable cause in a normal day, which there isn't, they're just looking at phone records. That's a different, my bill, you can look at my bill and see who I've been calling. And the same thing with respect to foreign phone calls.
But isn't the concern? I mean, what I hear people saying when they say they have expressed concerns about this, it's that we have witnessed incidences of late where the government has not handled confidential data in a particularly good way. We look at the IRS as a prime example of all that, and I think a lot of people look at it and they say, "Well, I'm just worried that the government, okay, maybe they're doing something right now, but who's to say we're not going to see what we saw at the IRS with this data?"
Well, I agree with that, and that, by the way, is a concern that I have. I think the lack of trust from the IRS story, where the government intervened, I'm absolutely convinced of that, and I believe that's going to lead in the food chain right up into the White House. The IRS has a bad history. It's funny about that. When we just step back for 1 second, years and years ago, if you remember, Nixon tried to use the IRS, and the IRS refused to do it. The commissioner in those days was Donald Alexander. He's kind of a hero. He refused to do it. It is a shame and a pity that this time around the IRS agreed to do it. And that shows you how that body has changed. It needs reforms and needs new players. But having said that, the NSA program is different than the IRS program. And the NSA program is ruled by FISA and by the FISA court. And I just have to believe that court is not going to be manipulated by the White House or any other political objectives. At least that's my hope. And if that's the case, then we should keep the NSA program because it does enhance our safety in the war against terrorism. So I'm in favor of it right now, and I think it's innocent until proven guilty.
All right, we got a break. Larry Kudlow, you're the host of the Larry Kudlow Show right here on WMAL Saturdays at 7 p.m., so you know better than anyone. You got a break for commercial, and that's where we are. Thanks.